If you'd like to get a video featured on the series, just send me an email following the instructions on the screen, where I will personally make you the best setup that I possibly can using the album that you send me. If needed, you can also send me your link through my Discord. I'll leave the link down in the description below. But other than that, let's go ahead and get started with the video. Alright, so for today's video, we're going to be going over Ilera's metal album. And this was honestly, it was a fairly interesting experience to go through, looking through your album and trying to figure out what exactly would work, what's best, what's not best, and etc. Now, just to provide some context as to what exactly we're working for today, Ilera went ahead on Discord and went ahead and asked me what exactly she was looking for, and she's basically looking for a general use type of setup, as well as like some kind of advice as to what type of metals and such she should be going for, based off what I can see from her album. So that's what we're going to be focusing on for today. So taking a quick glance through your album, Ilera, I noticed there was quite a few things, okay? Now, you have quite a few really good buffer, debuffer metals that are going to be used quite a lot, at least for now anyways, that are going to last you for quite a while. These are going to be some of the more recent metals, such as like the stained glass metals. You have the prime metals right here as well, another stained glass metal. These are going to be used fairly a lot. You have the most recent one as well, which is the prime Riku versus Roxas. You have Axel. Axel actually ended up being used quite a bit in the setups I'm about to show you as well. He's actually pretty good. The power in reverse, the max power reverse buffs that he brings just brings a lot of really good utility for your setups, for your power setups anyways. Now, when going through your album, there was also a few kind of like weaknesses that you do need to work on a little bit, or at least like work towards, I should say. And I'll explain those in a second after I kind of show the setups and such. Okay, so this Fairy Stars is actually going to be your best setup from the album and metals that you showed me and such. And it was actually a lot of fun being able to make this. Just mostly because of the fact of like how each of the metals actually like interact with each other in subtle various ways, which I'll explain in a second. And let's just go ahead and turn on the stats right here, so that way you guys can see, for those of you watching, the skills and traits that each of her metals happen to have. Okay, now, when making your setups, and I tried various Keyblades and such, this one was the best one, and the reason why this works, there's a few reasons why this works. It actually works really well too. Well, let's start off slow. Okay, so right here on the right hand side, we're gonna go ahead and use this to let you guys kind of help give you guys a visual as to like what are the buffs and debuffs we're gaining as we go along the Keyblade and such. Okay, now, the main use for the Shion EX, the normal Shion EX that we have right here in the first slot, is first of all for gauges. Okay, this is gonna be hard to gauges. It's to restore gauges. All right, she gives you +5 gauges. The second reason is for the second chance that you have on her. And the third reason, and it's mostly for this third reason, is the +7 general strength that she provides. Okay, there we go, general strength. This last one is the main reason why we're using her, and the rest are just kind of like icing on the cake, to be honest. And that's primarily because of the fact that we have a couple prime metals. Heck, we have like 3 prime metals within the setup, and none of them provide any general strength whatsoever. So you need a metal within the first slot to provide general strength. Okay, now your best metals, at least in the beginning of your Keyblade setups, are going to be your prime metals, mostly because of the fact that they actually have pretty good damage for what you have right now after looking at your album, as well as the fact that they also provide pretty much most of the buffs and debuffs within the game, like at least half in just one cast, which is pretty good, to be honest. But as you can see by looking on the right hand side over here, Shion EX does provide most of the buffs, and if you happen to have the, I think it's at rank 9. I don't remember what rank exactly it's at, but once you reach a certain rank, I think it might be like rank 7, 8, or 9. It's one of those ranks, okay? Once you reach one of those, you'll also get the +1 PSM strength buff that gets added. So this is actually not a +6 strength PSM strength buff. It's actually a +7 PSM strength buff that you have right here. So just a bit of a clarification. But just from the first slot, you already have max general strength and +7, which is pretty much near max PSM strength, as well as the +2 reverse buff. Okay, and obviously, of course, you still have about half of your debuffs left to apply on your opponent. So what we end up using right here is your Prime Illustrated Roxas, which basically ends up filling out the rest of the general defense debuffs and the magic debuffs at the very least. So if we slide this to the right, and also gives us max reverse debuffs as well. Okay, so that's pretty much most of the categories that we fulfilled. It's also worth noting it also gave us a +3 reverse buff. So we have max, we have max general strength and PSM strength, as well as the fact that we have near max. We only need 2 more reverse buffs as well. General defense debuff is fully maxed out. This is the most important one out of all of the debuffs, and same thing with general strength. General strength is always more important than PSM strength, okay, of any type. It's more important than reverse or upright strength as well. General strength and general defense are always the most important stats to go after, regardless of what type of strategy you're using. All right, but at the very least, we filled the general defense, okay? And then, because this is a magic medal, and it's a prime medal, it fully capped out the magic debuffs and, of course, like we said before, the reverse debuffs. So right here on the second slot already, we've pretty much maxed out all of the buffs and debuffs related to magic at the very least. So that also means that Prime Illustrated Roxas is going to do max damage for its AoE. Now, it only does max damage, like at the high end of its multiplier, when there's 0 parts left or 1 enemy left on the opponent. So it's going to do the low end of its multiplier just because of that purpose. And this is a general use setup, so it's meant for AoE, basically. Okay. Now, from there, we are actually going to be going into your Prime Riku versus Roxas, and it's basically doing the exact same thing, except now it's doing upright debuffs and buffs instead of reverse. Okay, so if we go to the third slot, you see right there, you now have max upright debuffs, and you have +3 upright buffs. Okay, now preferably if you had a Kairi EX, like a normal Kairi EX, instead of Shioni EX, I would have wanted to do a Kairi EX instead, just to help get those upright buffs, so that this way this guy does a little bit more damage, primarily because of the fact that Axel over here does provide +5 reverse buffs, which already maxes out your reverse buffs alongside the Prime Illustrated Roxas over here. But it's not a big deal that it's not a Kairi. At the very least, you had one of the two, which is nice. But at the very least, for the same exact reasons, this also will do a ton of damage, the most damage that it can, because of the fact that you've fully debuffed for its own metal type, as well as buff for its own metal type. The only buff that you do not have fully buffed out is the upright buff. So it's not going to do full max damage, but it's going to do near max damage. It's going to do pretty good. And then the medal after that is the Axel Plus. Okay, right here is honestly my favorite. That's my Discord, by the way, not yours. And that is primarily because of the fact that if you take a look right here before I slide it over, you can see right here that we still need the power debuff left to debuff, as well as the fact that we still need that one more power strength buff, as well as our reverse buff is still not capped out. So what the Axel over here is going to do is actually cap out all 3 of those conditions right there, as you can see by when it changed for us, which will allow Axel as well to also do more damage. That was also my Discord. Now, its multiplier condition is that it's going to do more damage the higher the slot number it is. And for medals such as like that, they actually do the most damage once they've reached, at the very least, slot 5, I believe. from my memory. Once they hit slot 5, so they can be in either slot 5 or slot 6, and they'll be at their highest end multiplier. So that means that because it's in slot 4, it's not going to do its highest multiplier damage, but it's still going to be pretty close to it, where it's going to do a ton of damage. Now, I know a lot of people complain about not getting tier 8 medals and such because of the fact that they can't 7-star. But to be honest, like I've stated a couple times already, or multiple times really, 7-starring medals is not a big deal. It's only a really big deal for like the meta and like top tier type stuff. But for people who are like intermediate or beginners, it's like you don't really need to worry about it too much. If you happen to have 7-star, then great. that's good for you. If you don't, it's not a big deal. And this is just like one of those situations where it's not a big deal that you don't have a 7-star axle. Like the utility alone of the axle is what you need. And like that's what ends up being useful right now. But aside from that, the only thing left in the setup that is missing is actually the speed buffs and the speed debuffs, okay, as well as the upright buffs, okay. And Woody over here, and there's a few things I liked about Woody. 1, you have the extra attack. 2, you actually have a cost reduction skill on it, which is great. It's not necessary, to be honest, but it's great, especially the fact you have extra attacks. So instead of using 8 gauges to use both casts total, you're only using 4 gauges, which is the equivalent of like a normal single cast, so that ends up working out. But if we go to the 5th slot, you can see right here that literally everything is maxed out now at this point, which is good. So, and also because of the fact that it is in the 5th slot, there's a good chance, depending on the type of enemies you're facing, that you might only have like 1 or 2 enemies left by the time you get to this 5th slot. And if you do have only 1 enemy left, that does mean that Woody's going to actually do his max multiplier damage condition as well, which is pretty nice. But it's really that extra attack which kind of like sealed the deal for you. Lastly, we are using your HD Ursula primarily because of the fact it's like your last strongest hitter that you have, and it's actually completely okay to use your HD Ursula primarily because of the fact that we do have the magic buffs and debuffs from your first 3 medals. We have the reverse buffs and debuffs from your Prime Illustrator Roxas as well. The Axo Plus actually helped cap out the rest of the reverse buffs that we were lacking. So your HD Ursula over here is actually going to do completely max damage, which is exactly what you want. Now, the only thing you could really do to actually improve your setup over here, there's only really 2 things I would suggest, which is going to be the fact that you really, absolutely really want to try and put some cost reduction skills on these 2 medals if possible, primarily because of the fact that they do cost 6 gauges each, which is super expensive. You honestly are using up a ton of gauges. So out of your entire Keyblade, I believe you're using there's 6 right here, 6 right here, 4 right here, 4 right here, and I don't know what Ursula is. I think she might be 4. Let's see, she's 3. So you're using 6, 6, 4, 4, 3. Okay. I hope you can see where kind of the issue is, where you are really using up a lot of gauges. So overall total, you're using 10, 20, 23 gauges, okay? And because of the fact that these medals in your first half do restore gauges, so you're restoring a total of 11 gauges. So you're netting off with using up a total of 12 gauges, okay? And you start off with 17. This is gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt a lot. So you really need to get those cost reduction skills as much as possible on these 2 prime medals as soon as you can. Especially I would do your Riku Roxas prime medal first, just because of the fact that it has no skill. So just you slapping on any attack boost max and cost reduction skill on it will immediately not only improve the damage on your Keyblade itself, but actually help you restore gauges as well, because it does restore 3 gauges. So if you give it a 2, 1, or 0 gauge cost reduction skill, you will be restoring gauges, which will obviously drop down the amount of gauges you're consuming a whole lot. Now, just as a bit of advice, if you are running into issues with the cost consumption, that like the number of gauges that this setup is using, what you can do to help that out, it will reduce the amount of damage that your setup does, but what you can do is you can get rid of the prime Roxas over here, and you can go ahead and replace that with one of your copy medals, your HD Vanitas actually. Now your HD Vanitas doesn't have any skill on it, so I would advise putting a skill on it. You should always try and give your best copy medal skills on at least your gilted copy medals should always have skills on them if possible, an attack skill. But you can replace your Prime Roxas with HD Vanitas over here to copy your Riku versus Roxas. And what will happen is, because of the fact that Riku versus Roxas does restore 3 gauges, and this is a 0 gauge copy medal, you'll actually end up restoring a free 3 gauges right here. And the overall cost of your Keyblade setup is actually going to go down quite a lot, because you're not consuming 6 and restoring 3 anymore. You're just straight up restoring 3. You use 6 right here, you use 4, you use 4 here, and you use 3. So you're using a total of 17 gauges this time if you were to replace that, and you were actually restoring 8 plus 3, you're actually restoring 11 gauges. So you're only using up a total of 6 gauges this time if we were to replace it. Now, the previous setup did about 174 million damage, and this setup right here, if you were to replace that medal, would actually go down to about 143 million. Okay, so it's quite a bit of a drop. It's about like a 30 million drop, but like I said before, sometimes you're going to need that gauge management if you happen to be using the setup for multiple turns. So that's just a suggestion right there. Now, I know you were asking for some advice as to like what type of medals and such you should be working towards, and the main thing I would basically say is that you want to work on your power medals. If we go ahead and look back at your album, we can see right here, like if I were to just, right now I have it organized by max album damage, okay? So the things that pop up front first, so like whatever is on the front over here, at the top of the list, these are gonna be your most damaging medals out of your entire album. So right now I have it by that. And if we go ahead and just do it by each attribute, we go to power, okay? This is what shows up. If we go to speed, this is what shows up. And if we go to magic, this is what shows up, okay? Now, the main thing I want to point out right here is that taking a look at your speed and magic, we see that you have really good buffer debuffer medals that are also 7-star right here, here, and it's okay that this one's not 7-star. It's a stained glass medal. It's supposed to be in the beginning of the Keyblade anyways. But you have these medals right here, okay? The prime medals themselves, though, are 7-star, which helps out a lot. Let's go take a look at your speed real quick. For speed, again, you have a stained glass, which is fine. It doesn't need to be 7-star. But you have these woodies over here, which are 7-star. And these are main buffer, debuffer medals, okay? If we go to power, this is what I want to point out to you. When we look at power, sure, yes, you have your stained glass. You even have Syax, which is kind of like mostly a stained. You have Axel as well, which is like a lesser stained glass, okay? But the problem is that you don't have any actual main debuffer medals like a prime medal that are 7-star, okay? So not necessarily saying that your power setup is going to be bad, it's just not going to be anywhere nearly close to like any of your other speed or magic setups, just because of the fact you don't like your, like if we scroll down, you can see here, it's actually going to probably be very low on the list somewhere. You have a prime Buzz Lightyear, but it has no dots, no skill, no traits. It's literally a vanilla medal. And I went ahead and made like one of the best power setups I could for you, a general use setup as well. So let me just go through these. So this right here was on the Fenrir, okay? I managed to get about 103, 100.6 million damage with this setup. Whew. Sorry, this is actually your most damaging setup. I accidentally showed the wrong one. This is your most damaging Fenrir setup, okay? But one of the main issues with this setup is the fact that your buzz is literally vanilla. It has nothing on it. Quite literally, if you were to just improve your buzz quite a bit, this setup could do a lot better. Now, it still won't come close to your fairy stars, but at least it will be a lot better. And all future power setups as well, at least for upright, will be a lot better. Like the buzz right here is your main concern. Like for example, if we were to go ahead and completely gilt it, this is how much extra damage it would do. It does about 1 million or so extra damage, which isn't much, but it's noticeable. If we were to go ahead and give it a skill, let's say 6 max, okay? If we give it 6 max, it goes to 12 million, all right? Now, one thing I want to note for this setup is that you're not actually completely maxing out your upright debuffs until your pet slot, which means you're actually losing out on a ton of damage right here and here as well. So, as well as you're not actually getting your upright buffs either until, like your full upright buffs, until your pet slot as well. So you're actually losing out a lot of damage in the upright buffs and debuffs because of the fact your buzz isn't fully maxed out. So even if if we were to make it 7-star, let's make it a 7-star buzz with a legit trait on it, okay? I mean skill on it. You do a huge amount of damage just from completely like maxing out your buzz as much as possible. Remember that at the very beginning of this setup, we were at about 109 million damage, and just from maxing out your buzz, you went to like 128 million damage. That's huge. But then again, if just by 2nd slot, okay, we're still missing out on upright buffs and debuffs, okay, even at the 7-star version. Now, the 7-star version did provide +3 upright buffs, which helped, okay? But the easiest fix that we can do for this is, honestly, if you can also completely max out your key art sky. Now, it will take longer to 7-star it because of the fact it is a tier 5 medal compared to a tier 4 buzz. But it's still something feasible for you to work toward. But as you can see here, by replacing it, the damage actually did go up by like about 2 million or so just by replacing it with your sky, okay? And that is because of 2 reasons. Like if we go to the 2nd slot here. 2nd slot, all right? We see here that we only have +3 upright buffs and -4 upright debuffs, all right? If we go to slot 3, because we're using a copy medal now, your upright debuffs does get maxed out, and your upright buffs is near max this time, okay? That's a significant improvement. What if we were to actually just gilt your key art sky? It still doesn't have a skill. What would happen? It jumps up by about like 4 million, all right? And what if we were to actually give it a skill? Let's say like attack boost 6 again, okay? Give it a skill. Boom, it's about 145 million damage. As you can see here, like quite literally, just because we have a 7-star, like a fully buffed out buzz right here for your setup, you straight up went from 109 million damage, and we also gilted and skilled this off, of course, okay? But just by making some minor improvements to your sky, as well as fully buffing out your buzz, we're getting fairly close to your fairy stars, to be honest. And even better, if you were to also make sky 7-star, it's only going to add to the damage. It's not going to do anything extra, but it's just going to add to damage. If we're to fully buff that out to 7-star, then this would be 157 million damage, okay? That's a significant improvement. In terms of your power setups, you have some decent damage medals. You have decent damage medals for your power section. It's just literally you are lacking in a solid power AoE debuffer that you can rely on for your setups. That's the main thing you're lacking, and Buzz is literally your answer to that. But other than that, just to reiterate, Fairy Stars, this setup right here is your best Keyblade. I recommend putting cost reduction skills on this guy and this guy if possible. And in terms of what to improve on, just work on getting your Buzz as much as possible maxed out as possible, because that's what's going to really help you. And at the very least, try and guilt your Sky. You have like minus 60 ground traits, like both of them on it. Like, it's a really good copy medal. But if you can get your Buzz to 7-star at the very least, even if it has no skills on it, just getting it to 7-star alone will help you out a lot, just because it'll provide some of the upright buffs. But other than that, that's it for today, guys. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe and hit that bell button. It's the best way to know when I upload more videos such as this one. I am posting Kingdom Keys series videos every single Sunday, so if you'd like to participate, please, by all means, go ahead and submit your submission either on Discord or send me an email. But other than that, my name is Brian from Kingdom Hearts Cross Nation, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.